So I entitled what we're going to do all together as Construction of Children as Good Consumers. So this is based on the premise that one thing that Western institutions, such as education, do is to teach us as citizens to be consumers. So quite an idea that you might argue with. And this is an introduction to these things. So it contains lots of ideas which you might want to follow through either in your assignments or as you go through your 3 years of your degree. So these sort of topics are things that people come back to often in their dissertations in their third year. So I'm just sort of trying to introduce some ideas that you might be interested in, and it's up to you to pick up on the actual topics, and that will inform the reading that you want to do. Okay? So the way it's going to work is we're going to have the hour's lecture. We're then going to have 20 minutes in two seminar groups where we discuss some of the issues, and then we're going to talk about the next assignment. You'll be glad to know. Okay, so first of all, I would like you just to watch this video and just see what your gut reaction to it is, and I'll ask people at the end what their thoughts were.
Introducing Fingerlings Baby Monkeys, adorable interactive pets that respond to sound, motion, and touch. We're going to show you some of the fun ways you can interact with your Fingerlings pet. Let's start by unboxing. First, remove the outer blister, then carefully remove any additional elastics or ties before lifting your monkey from the inner blister. Inside the package, you'll find one Fingerlings Baby Monkey, ready to go with 4 LR44 batteries already installed, plus a quick start guide. Ready to play? Slide the switch on the back of your monkey's head to turn it on. Your new friend will greet you with cute monkey babble. Your monkey has special sensors that allow it to respond to your touch in different ways. These are located on either side of protective hair. Tap your monkey's head once or twice on either side of her hair, and you'll get a variety of different reactions. Your monkey can also sense when it changes position. Right side up or upside down, your Fingerlings Baby Monkey loves to monkey around. Why not shake things up a bit? Your Fingerlings Baby Monkey will interact with you in different ways, depending on how she's being held. Let's start with right side up. Pet your monkey to show affection, and your little friend will show her appreciation. She'll react differently if you stroke her head once or continuously. But for best results, make sure you're touching both sides of your monkey's hair at the same time. Want a fun surprise? Try cradling your entire Fingerlings head with your hand for a couple of seconds. Fingerlings also love to get kisses. Blow a kiss toward her face, and your monkey will kiss you back. Although sometimes you might get a sneeze instead. Your Fingerlings will also respond to sudden loud sounds in different ways, depending on the position she's in. Try clapping your hands or snapping your fingers, and watch your pet monkey react. Your Fingerlings Baby Monkeys also love to hang upside down by their tails. Try blowing in your monkey's face for a new silly reaction. If you cradle your monkey's head for 2 seconds, you'll hear a burp. Your Fingerlings pet also reacts differently to noises when she's upside down. If you swing your monkey side to side or front to back, your monkey will laugh hysterically. Next, try laying your Fingerlings Baby Monkey down on its back. Your monkey loves to be rocked and cradled from the palm of your hand, and you'll love the calm monkey sounds your little friend makes when you pet her while she's lying down. You'll also get different sleepy reactions to sounds and kisses. Your Fingerlings' arms and legs are designed to grip onto different objects. Try a highlighter or a handle on your mug, the strap of your purse, the side of a monitor, or even the bookcase in your room. The possibilities are endless. Your Fingerlings also love to hang by their tails. Try a belt loop or a pocket on your jeans. Hang them from your backpack, from another toy or playset, or your notebook or tablet. You could even hang them from your ears. And remember, what Fingerlings love best is grabbing onto your fingers, of course. Clap twice to get your monkey to sing a happy monkey tune. If you have more than one fingerlings baby monkey, you can make them sing together. If your monkey is left alone for more than 60 seconds, she will whistle out of boredom. She'll try to get your attention a few more times, and if you continue to ignore her, she'll make a snoring sound and go to sleep to conserve energy. When you're ready to play again, simply turn your fingerlings baby monkey off, then on again. If you find your fingerlings pet is not responding, she might be asleep. Try turning her off and on again to wake her up. If your monkey still doesn't respond or is slow to respond, it's probably time to replace the batteries. Changing batteries is a breeze. Ask an adult to unscrew the battery compartment located on your fingerling's back. You'll need a small screwdriver for this task. Then remove the batteries with your fingers. If you have trouble removing the batteries, try holding your monkey on its back and gently tap the front of its body. Next, carefully insert 4 fresh LR44 batteries. The battery direction should match the polarity shown inside the battery compartment. Remember not to mix and match old batteries with new batteries, and be sure to use batteries of the same type. Next, replace the battery cover, being careful not to over-tighten the screws. Now you know some of the things you can do with your new interactive Playmate. For more information and videos, visit wowie.com/fingerlings.
So you now know all you ever need to know about fingerlings, which apparently are the PAV toy for this Christmas. So this is the toy that parents have been nagged about. I was talking to a teacher on the bus in Hilton Road, and she said that she had already had her order cancelled because they were out of stock and couldn't get one anywhere. So what are your reactions? I can see people shaking their heads and you think it's silly, okay? Yeah? Okay, any other reactions, thoughts on that video?
I don't actually do that much. They like sounds and turn their head, and that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, so actually you might think not a very...
It's very American.
Very American, yeah, definitely very American. Definitely the American selling to us, isn't it? And selling to our children. Anything else that struck you?
I wonder how expensive they are.
Quite expensive, I think, for a bit of plastic and a battery. Okay, so it is an academic exercise to analyse that sort of advertisement. So the course that you're doing is very multidisciplinary. This takes a sociological perspective, but the area of child as consumers has been studied by psychologists, by historians, all sorts of different disciplines. Marketing. So marketing is an academic course that you could take. They're, of course, very interested in the area of children. Depending when you last went on to Moodle and onto this particular module, you will see that I have actually put 2 additional journal articles for you. And one thing I wanted you to think about when you read those journal articles is where is the person publishing and how does that affect the position that they're taking or the arguments that they've chosen to talk about in their article, because they come from 2 very different journals. Okay, so dig down a little bit deeper for me as to sort of what you might criticise, be critical about in that video. Yeah?
Well, it's not a TVS, but it's not a television assessment. It's like probably a link that they'll have on their website or a indented video.
So that's really interesting. Sort of the older you are, you know, our children are very media savvy, so you might be interested in children as consumers of media. Something that you're interested in looking at. Anything else?
They're using a child to sell for children.
Yes, really interesting, isn't it? And a very particular sort of child. Think about that child in that video. So they're definitely using a child, and the one thing that came to my attention is that at the end, it says get an adult to change the batteries, but that child changes the batteries. But what else about that child then? Let's dig down sociologically. Yeah, really interesting. So quite a middle class, so maybe aiming at like Hugo said, they might maybe cost quite a lot of money, so it's the parents who've got money who can afford to buy it. Sorry, what did you say, Rob?
The appearance, you know, the sort of long,
Yeah.
long hair, you know, happy, white, all-American child. You know.
Yeah, female. Anything in that video that sort of you think they put in maybe to appeal in case a boy might want one? Yeah, there's a bit of farting, a bit of burping in there, isn't there? Yeah, so, however, interestingly, if you listen, they do call the monkeys she at one point. So apparently they're female monkeys.
She was quite old, child,
Yeah, so she wasn't, and yeah, you're right, because
I thought
actually,
she'd be younger, but from the beginning, she was quite old. Well, she looked quite old.
yeah, so I just think about 10, but definitely there's an effort, that will be asked for by 4, 5 and 6 year olds, won't it? Just the sort of toy that 4, 5 and 6 year olds are going to be attracted to and think that they want. Okay. So the ideas that I've sort of put into this particular presentation are that artifacts of childhood, i.e. toys, clothing, you can actually take them as something that you use as a stimulus to academic thought. So the word artifact is used by anthropologists in particular, or archaeologists. So if you think that archaeologists will dig up bits of pottery and will put together ideas about the society that piece of pottery. And historians and sociologists of childhood will do the same with toys and things from the past or the present to do with childhood and sort of dissect the meaning of them. And I actually, at my last place that I taught, had a student, an undergraduate student, who did a really interesting dissertation on, she was interested in outdoor play in particular, and she interviewed grandparents, parents and children to see what their different perceptions and memories of outdoor play were and draw some conclusions. So that was a really interesting dissertation. So just sort of make me think about the ways, different ways that you might look at these sort of topics around childhood and how you might theorise them, because university education is all about theorising and afterwards maybe about thinking about how those theories might impact on your practice. But in your first 3 years, what you're being asked to do is to get to grips with theory, which is not an easy thing, but it's quite an exciting thing. Okay, so we're going to, in that vein, we're also going to look at the politics of consumer societies, because you can't really discuss any of these sociological topics without touching on politics, because politics is just different ways of interpreting and looking at the world we live in. And we're going to sort of introduce the idea of the way, which Patrick may well have introduced to you when he was looking at teenage culture, young people's culture, the way that articles and goods and things that we own affect our identity and our feelings about ourselves. And I would say that's as true of adults, many adults, as it is of children. So it's a really important topic in the view of the fact that we are all consumers. We can't escape. We live in a consumerist society. It's impossible for any of us to escape from it, although we may feel uncomfortable about it. And it obviously links with the sort of world concern about the environment. And I would say that that's something interesting to explore with children and young people as well. So the idea is that consumerist society takes away what the natural world gives us, but doesn't put anything back, or doesn't at least replace what's been taken away. And so you might want to think about that in terms of those plastic monkeys and the number of batteries that they might use. And just a general sort of overall question that links with your assignment. So I've just rephrased that idea of whether childhood is being eroded and giving you an alternative. Is consumerism actually constructing our children? Is it making our children what they are? Okay, so I've said a little bit about this already. So archaeology and anthropology study groups of people for the objects that are important to them. So you might want to be looking at toys or using arguments about toys in that area. Objects aren't neutral, so they have all sorts of things. You brought up lots of things about that those monkeys said to you, ideas that you already had that can be argued about. And there is quite a lot of academic interest in the artefacts of childhood, and it's part of representing children as a group worthy of being studied. So in some ways, it does link back to what we thought about last week in terms of the voice of the child, recognising child. So it comes from the argument that what makes something real in society, because these ideas about society aren't like a chair, it takes the idea that one thing that makes particular groups of people work important and brings their voice to the front is that academics show an interest in them and people start writing about that, whether it's in newspapers or as academics. And as you go through, you might be particularly interested in the ethics of children in research. And one of those articles is about the ethics of children using primary school children in market research. But there are lots of ethical things to think about if you are doing research on or with children and young people. How are you treating them as a researcher? Okay, so this is the bit I really enjoyed at home. So this link takes you to a website, and this website has toys from the 50s, 60s, 70s, going right through to sort of the 90s. So I've chosen the 70s for a reason that you can imagine yourself. So these toys from the 70s, which apparently were the toys being sold to me, or to my parents when I was young. Recognise any of them, even though you're younger? Go and shout out what can you see there that's still on the market today.
I mean, one form or another, most of them are much less so overdone. That seems to be a bit out of focus.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of them.
Yeah. Bikes and trikes and made houses.
You still get play guns like Nerf, it's just, they've changed. Instead of shooting little metal pellets, they shoot little foam darts.
Okay, didn't know that. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so they're all recognisable toys. The Space Hopper. The Space Hopper is quite interesting, I think, in that it's a sort of nostalgia. I think that that's something that's sold to parents, because I think parents remember Space Hoppers from when they were younger, or grandparents maybe even. About how old I'm getting. It's another selling technique that we remember these toys. We're nostalgic about our childhood, so we think, oh yeah, that's a toy that we're willing to give as a present. And that comes up again. So 1970s is the age of the chopper bike. That was the real sort of expensive toy that everybody wanted in there. Particularly boys wanted in the 1970s, a chopper bike. And actually, there is an advert at the moment, can't remember what it's for, but it says, have you sort of lost your childhood ability to be free, and do you remember? And it has a picture of the main person in the advert riding a chopper bike. So again, advertisements are pulling on our own nostalgia about things. Not just to advertise toys to children, but to advertise anything that you can think of, and it might even include insurance. So the gun, I'm glad you picked out the gun. So there is plenty in the library of literature that argues about whether guns should be allowed, whether we should give toy guns to children. Lots of different opinions. And what, for me, that links with very much in education, if you're doing education studies, is the idea of superheroes. So there's a lot of work being done on getting boys in particular to write through superhero play. Because that not say boys don't like enough, so how can we tap into boys? They're going to like superheroes. True or not. And there are lots of other issues that you might want to look at in terms of do superheroes, because obviously there are female superheroes. The problem with female superheroes, of course, is that they tend to be a very particular shape, they're quite sexualised. So while there's an argument for having superheroes because it helps boys, the flip side of that is what does it do to girls, and girls immediately themselves. I mean, another sort of, and in the other presentation this is highlighted more, but what you might also want to look at is how many of these pictures are pocket money toys, because I have a sort of theory that actually when I look through them, what is different now is that there isn't so much that's very cheap in the toy line. So this picture here, I really remember these. There's a picture on there somewhere, of a toy which was a playground toy. It was really popular when I was in the infants, and it was two balls on the end of two bits of string, and you could do tricks with it, and they called I think they called knockers or something. But they were actually and right at the beginning, though, in my discussion we talked about conkers and conkers being banned. But this toy, I mean, I can remember wanting it so much. And it wasn't expensive, it was a sort of pocket, something you could save your pocket money up for. But they were actually banned in the playground because they tended to come off the string on the end and take children's eyes out. So the same issues, what I'm saying to you with that story is that the same issues come up. So the media at one point focused on conkers injuring children, and we're all outraged and said, how absolutely ridiculous. But it's actually not a new thing. So there is a balance between, obviously, health and safety and stopping children doing things that we think are good things to do. Oh, there we are. There's the picture there. That's what it looks like. The whole world is in black and white. Okay, so the areas that you may well be arguing around, the big moral dilemmas or moral panics that this tends to bring up are the sexualisation of childhood, and two sides of that argument: do we protect our children, and or should we not ignore these things and actually be educating them? So should we, if our children are all consumers, should we, within the work that we do or the work that people do with young children, actually be not ignoring these topics and raising them and talking about them with children? Childhood obesity, that's a huge one at the moment. So government have put in lots of things about, shall we weigh all our 5-year-olds as they come into school and say to their parents, well, you have to take this class properly. Or are we really talking about children having the wrong sorts of diet? What does advertising do in that? You look, how often is fruit advertised? And how expensive is fruit in comparison to a very cheap loaf of white bread? So this is a really important topic at the moment, because we've got a fear, or we're panicking about children being too fat, but we also have even quite middle-class families having to use food banks. So a real tension. So a lot of argument in academia is about tensions between things. And there are things to be said on both sides of the argument, and that's what you're looking for in your essays. And Guns and Superheroes, again, we talked about already, but you might ask, is it because our children are more violent than they used to be, or is it because we live in a more violent society? Or have we always had a very violent society? Okay, so, really the arguments about consumerism in general always hark back to Marxism. Now, that's not saying that I'm a Marxist, because I'm not particularly, but I think to really understand these arguments, you need to have some basic understanding of Marxism. Anyone come across Marxism before? Yeah? Okay, someone up there, tell me just generally what the... So tell me anything about Marxism. Perfect explanation. So exploitation of the working, the people who actually do the work, by the bourgeoisie and the ruling classes. So that's quite a nice summing up of it. And beyond that, what Marx says is that it's always an internal struggle between these classes. So the bourgeoisie, and there have been lots of theories beyond Marx now. There's still lots of writing, particularly by postmodern and post-structuralist theorists, reinterpreting Marxism for our postmodern society. But there's always a struggle. The bourgeoisie always want to become the ruling class, and although the people who are doing the work are producing something that's stolen by those ruling classes, so the excess of what we produce, much more of our disposable income goes to big corporations now, but for Marx to the upper classes. And for Marx, revolution is the only solution. So the overthrow of the upper classes is the only solution in Marxist theory. But that's what's been, obviously we've had communism things since then. So there's a question about whether that works in terms of making a more equal society or not. The other important thing about Marxist theory is, as well as the people involved, Marx says that over the top of all of this is the institutions that keep us in line, really, and give us the messages that the ruling classes want us to have. So nothing can change because education, religion, the media in particular now, their purpose is to keep the status quo going all the time. Okay? And interestingly, I was listening to the radio this morning, and they were talking about 1984, and that.
Statue, that's what the BBC.
No, it was that he and who wrote 1984? George Orwell. That's right. So Orwell actually worked for the BBC, and there is a theory that when he's talking about the Ministry of Truth, what he's talking about is the BBC. So it's quite an interesting idea. I'm not asking. Okay, so back to children that we're talking about. So still, it's worth thinking about your essay in terms of issues and tensions. So what are the different sides of the argument, and how do they marry together? Because you might, read one thing and think, wow, I really agree with that. And then you read something really different and you think, oh, well, I really agree with that as well. So the trick is to work your way through those arguments and try and find a balance in your essay, putting those arguments forward and then evaluating them, saying, well, which do I think, or which from has more evidence to back it up? And some of that might come from your own experience. Um, so one big tension that we've touched on is advertising to children. So in the video at the very beginning, you picked up straight away that that was an advert by children, for children, on a medium, so YouTube, that children may be much more familiar with and comfortable with than possibly their parents. Although I think that's maybe becoming less true as we go on, because obviously probably your parents even have been through that sort of expansion of media and use Facebook and use social media. So parents quite often like it, quite often institutions are trying to pull in on that, so they will share reports and things via social media and schools, and there's lots of discussion that happens around that. I've given you an article about market research with children and the pros and cons of that. Lots of products aimed at children, as those monkeys are, but clothing is one that has caused a lot of disturbance among parents and professionals. So particularly the early sexualisation of children, so tweenies, they're sometimes called. And a few years ago, there was a big thing in the media about Primark being shamed because they were selling padded bras to young children. And there's also an interesting argument to be had between children and money. So if we go back to our Marxist theory, children aren't visible there because children are not wage earners. So children are outside that theoretical structure. And feminists might argue that in the past women were outside it as well. But, I mean, you might say, wow, you know, worse being unemployed than unemployed people. Children, they're real scoundrels, aren't they? Look, you know, they come into the world, they expect to be fed for longer and longer till you're about 24, if you're my daughter, and you decide to come back home. And they want all these toys and things, expect to have them, but they're not bringing anything in. On the other hand, there are hidden statistics about children and work, and obviously that's a very Eurocentric, if you like, position to take. If you look globally, there are children who work much younger, who have to work because otherwise there's no food on the table. Even in this country, if you think about topics such as young carers, how much do young carers actually contribute to our economy, but it's hidden away. So if you're interested in economics, there's a rich vein of things you can talk about. And lots of people are interested in children and pocket money. So there are lots of research articles about how much pocket money children have had over the years, whether they have more pocket money or less pocket money now, what they have to do with that pocket money. So do they have to earn their pocket money by doing chores, or are they just given their pocket money? And these are things that people have really made into moral issues. Okay, so moving on a little bit onto identity, I call it identity rebellion and stereotyping. So, why do you think, where do you think these sort of roots of people, this concept of people fitting into these roots come from? What do you think I Googled when I wanted that picture? Any ideas? What do you think? No?
Types of maybe?
Yeah, so high school cliques is what I actually Googled, and there was absolutely loads came up. So I had a huge choice of things. So according to this, there are hipsters, emos, AT kids. What are AT kids? Okay, thank you.
smart ones if they're honest students.
Oh, right, okay. So, and this tends to sort of focus on high schools, I will tell you. So we've got artists, that's self-explanatory. Stoners and burnouts. My goodness, what does that inspire in you?
Okay.
Eh?
Okay.
Druggies. So for young people, there is a category that they feel they come across who are the druggies of the school. So what about that poor group of students who have been categorised as that? What might that do to their identity, do you think?
If you spend your entire life being called something, you're more likely to end up becoming it.
Yeah, so that's a good theory. Sort of the way that we label people is self-fulfilling. So if we say to children from a very early age, you're thick as big shit. Yeah. So someone in third year at the moment is looking at concepts in their dissertation of failure, so really interesting. Yeah. But also, I think, sort of highlighting what we might say is a societal problem or a moral panic, about young people taking drugs, which may not be, I mean, there has been work around, particularly alcohol, that it actually affects older people in the sort of 60-plus age group more than young people now. So a lot of these things that the media push are not necessarily the truth, if there is such a thing as the truth. Or they're skewed. If you actually looked at the figures and other research, you'd find that our perceptions are maybe biased. So I did ask you, where do you think where have these images of our children as in these groups? Because it never happened when I was at school. As traumatic as secondary school might have been, I don't think that we had this. Do you feel that you had this in secondary school? That you had to be part of a clique or a group? You do. Okay, interesting.
To a certain degree. I mean, there's probably one of the more popular movies, I think it's called Mean Girls. Like, almost one of the intros to the movie is the main character walking around the school, being introduced to each individual clique. And, I mean, maybe less so in England, I don't know. But there are definitely cliques of students. Like, you have the one that, the group, the sports teams, for example. Like, when I was in secondary school, they always used to hang out together. Or the people who really like computers, etc.
Yeah. So I think it's putting your nails, we've got around these houses, but actually, it's high school movies. American high school movies that have become so popular. And it's those. So those are the images that children all around the world are getting. Even if it's not really a reflection of their own lives, and that comes into advertising quite a lot. So it's a sort of code that children have that we as adults may or may not have access to. But it's something that children may see very much as the real world. And obviously, a lot of, so you do get groups that sort of rebel against that. Now, the reason I particularly put this in is to go back to Cohen's original work on moral panics. Because moral panics is another theory that you're drawing on. It isn't a fact. It isn't something that you can't argue with. So you can think about whether you agree that moral panics are a real thing or not. But it's something that Cohen came up about in his work. So has anyone actually gone to the library and looked at Cohen's text? Did Patrick talk about it? I know it's been mentioned, but I wasn't sure how much. Okay, so do you know what Cohen was actually writing about in his original piece of work? No, so he's writing about mods and rockers. So you can see that what he's saying is that in the 1950s, so a long time ago, we've suddenly got teenage culture. And the adult world and the establishment panic. We've got young people who are not conforming, they're choosing their own clothes, and straight away it's connected with violence and a breakdown in society. Now there may be a little bit of truth, because I believe on the South Coast there were big battles between mods and rockers. However, if you think across the country, there were probably lots of perfectly normal young people who thought, I like that style of dressing, I want to have my own identity, I'm experimenting with who I am, and they have nothing to do with violence.
Mods and rockers were also about the old and the new. The rockers were the old scene and the mods were the new scene.
Right, yeah, okay. And linked very much with music, I'm guessing, yeah. And if you bring that up to date, very similar with Quidditch. We had the concept of thinking of Quidditch, so in a lot of training about equality and diversity, you'll have a picture of young people with their hoods up. What are these young people doing? Are they hanging around on the street corner ready to knife whoever goes past? Or is it a cold day and they put their hoods up because they wouldn't? So that's what Cohen is talking about. If you just go onto the library and put in moral panics, you will come up with literature and literature and literature. So in library searches, it is worth putting some time aside to play around. I know people sort of want an answer, how do I find a piece of literature that I'm going to use in my assignment? But actually, I don't think it can be done in that way. I think you need to have a play around with the library website, see what comes up, read the blurb or the abstracts and decide what it is which piece you would like to use for your assignment. And within moral panics seems to be or is a concept and a theory which is at the heart of this particular module. So my advice would be don't ignore it. Try and engage with it and maybe put it into whatever you're writing about if you did find some literature on it. But there's absolutely masses. Then another sort of very big way that idea of moral panics has been used, and I know this has been sort of mentioned again as well, is around the case of Jamie Bulger. So you're all familiar with what happened with Jamie Bulger? Who was he? No? Never heard of him. Okay. So Jamie Bulger was a toddler. There have been cases like this since, but he was a toddler, and two children of about, I think they were about 8, took Jamie Bulger from the shopping centre, so his mum turned his back, the nightmare disappeared, and they took him to a railway line and they stoned him to death. So it is a shocking case. Even more shocking in some ways, if you look at the literature, is that after the case, there was a lot of demonisation even of the parents. So there were people in the media who waded in and said it was the parents' fault that that mother didn't care for her child. And so there was that side. Yeah.
But with this case, was there people more directly consumerism and film in the aspect of that, the case is directly related to the film to child play, and maybe actually they've been acting when they've been in that film. And that was actually bad for a period of time in that case.
Absolutely, yes. So that was another thing that people used to try and explain it. So they said that the effect of violent videos on our young children, our young people, was what caused these two boys to carry out this particular act. And then, of course, there's lots of argument about, if you think we looked at the criminal justice system in children, there was lots of debate about what should be done with those. Actually, I think there were 10, so I think they did just come into the age of criminal responsibility. And they have actually been in the media in the last couple of years because they're obviously adults. And there was a fuss about one of them being put up for parole, and they found new evidence against him that he was doing kept in prison. So it's a case that keeps recurring, but because people remember it.
When was this instance, sir? When was the instance, sir?
Oh, when was it? It was 1980s, I think. Look it up. So yeah, I'm fairly sure sort of around the 80s. So they are adults now. 1993, oh, a bit later than I thought, thank you. So, and I'm sure that if you think about it, you will find other cases that have come up since. There is some good research, a comparative study that I came across in a journal article where they compare that particular case in Britain with how a child killer of a child was treated in one of the Scandinavian countries. And the approach to how they treated those young offenders was very, very different in the two countries. So our country took a very penal approach, a punish approach, whereas Scandinavia took a much more therapeutic, bring that young person back into society approach. So you can see that there are very, very different ways of handling these things. So these are what we might have a little bit of discussion about in our discussion groups in a little while. So age appropriateness is something that is a concept people are very interested in, and parents in particular, and teachers and other professionals tend to get quite hung up on what is age appropriate in anything, either in advertising and selling to children. So there's an argument to be had, where do we draw the line? But again, to me, it might be an argument about when do we start educating children about sales techniques? Because you might argue to me that actually quite young children are very savvy now about advertising. But advertising is always moving on, isn't it? So you know, you might be interested in the fact that, I mean, what we saw was a YouTube advert, but I mean, adverts are very targeted now, aren't they, as well? So there's a big debate about children on the media. Should those adverts be targeted at them? Those that, I can't remember what you call it, but so I sort of was looking for I wanted a new bathroom, and so I sort of was shopping around the bathroom things, and ever since, I finished that now, but ever since, all I get on my Facebook page or when I go on the internet is lots of adverts for plumbing shops.
You can get rid of those.
Okay, I'll go. Well, talk to me after, Hugo. So, but that's the argument around, you know, is that, I mean, I'm an adult, so obviously I can ignore them, or I can go to Hugo and say, please could you come and show me, or someone else, how to get rid of this. But is that true of children? And what should we do about it? What would we accept in terms of what adverts are allowed to be targeted at children, or should no adverts at all be targeted at children? Those are things that you can sort of argue about. Is the relation between childhood and consumerism an important issue, one that we should think about academically and think about professionally, or is it just a moral panic, something that the media has blown out of all proportion and that affects only a small number of children? I think I'll probably say not in this case, because consumerism is all around us. And then, one thing that you probably will not be able to avoid when you're writing is who is to blame? Who are we going to say is at fault? Is it parents? Because a lot of people go for parents, as we've seen even in the Jamie Bolger case, which is very extreme. So, in here for you is the idea of, are they good toys and bad toys? So going back to our monkeys, we didn't really like them because you objected them to being plastic and targeted at girls and saying something particular about girls, and you know. But you might turn that in your head. Now, the person who's looked at this part, if you're interested in early childhood, I think it comes under Jones and Holmes, their work from Manchester. It actually took some dolls that have very sexualized features, so very big eyes. And these dolls, an argument for them is that they do at least come in all different ethnicities, but they all give one body type. Now, their research was on things that we don't allow to come into nursery. So the children were bringing these toys, and they were sort of taken away at the door, because they were toys that you should play with at home. It's a bit sad that you've got them and your parents bought them for you, but, you know, whatever happens, you're not bringing them into our nursery, where we have very high morals and we know what's good educational toys and what's bad educational toys. But that is not necessarily how the children see them. So the question is it just adults in some cases who are seeing this as over-sexualisation, where the children are just exploring their own identities and enjoying playing with these particular dolls? But look at the Holmes and Jones research, because it's really interesting, and it's up to date, and it goes into current nursery and reception classes. So other people who might get the blame: markets, big companies, politicians might get the blame. They might be sort of allowing things that we think should be banned, and professionals quite often get the blame for things. So there's the workers, head teachers. And obviously the people who are doing a course that to some extent links practice and theory, can anything be done? Should anything be done? So allow yourself to ask that question within your essays and within your thinking. So, to recap, Catherine should be sort of back in a minute to split us into our groups. So what we looked at, children in the West are born into and grow up surrounded by consumerist values. You might argue childhood is just another market if you're thinking about childhood as a social construction, which is what this module is trying to do. There is a tension between protecting children from the excesses of consumerism and teaching them to make informed choices, which I sort of touched on. If you're looking for solid literature, lots and lots on sex education. Or is it the also probably literature on the youth service, and whether whose job should it be to give sex education? Is it the nurse's job? Because what tends to happen is that now that you get a bus, don't you, and it's a sort of joint service thing, and the nurse is on there and she's giving out free condoms and whatever. So is that the right way to deal with it? Projects such as clothing toys aren't neutral. They convey messages, both to children and to adults, about identity, including gender, race, social class, and whether you belong to the group or you're an outsider. So that's quite nice academic language in the sociology course. Who is an insider and who is an outsider, and what does that mean? Why is it important? Okay. So, before Catherine comes back, any questions, comments? Anything you want to know more about? Anything you're totally confused about and think, I don't know what that was about? And if there is, because these are difficult concepts, they're not easy at all. So, you know, if there are things you think, oh, I'd like to sort of discuss that more, then you come and have a
I worked in a primary school once, and there were certain toys you couldn't bring in. And whenever, like, at least to my knowledge, a lot of, especially the boys, when they were playing with like Lego or Mobilo, were like, don't make guns. And they wouldn't make guns, they would make armies instead. And they would be guns and they'd still play with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, so even though you can say you shouldn't do it, they'll still find a way if they want to.
I mean, that's interesting. In the research, in my PhD research that I did, I went into quite a lot of nurseries, and there were a group of boys in this one nursery, and they were really bright little boys. And one of them had a dad who was a fireman. So what they did, they still made what may look very much like guns, but if an adult asked them, it was always fire hose. The children were really quite savvy in many ways. So yeah, no, I mean, that's a really interesting, and again, I can remember years and years ago when I was teaching in primary, this idea of superheroes, that a little boy in reception had been told off at playtime and said, oh, Timothy, what happened? Because he was like an only child, very well cared for, and he started hitting people. And he said, it wasn't me, it was Skeletor. So, superheroes all back to the, they're not a new thing. Oh, okay, she's in somewhere. Okay, so anything else? Just have a couple of minutes to chill till Catherine comes in and it's